from the 80s all the way till today, occasionally still in the news or running across your news feed for some ridiculously stupid thing he advocated this week. Lifelong token, hanger-on, cultural appropriator, and overall talentless hack, Jim Carrey. But dude, he was Fire Marshal Bill, or whatever his name was on In Living Color. He was the Riddler, and I'm a colossal jerk that just put down Jim Carrey. Well, too bad. When I was young and stupid in the 80s, I thought Jim Carrey was very funny. I watched that awful show In Living Color. If you go back and revisit any of it, that ridiculous dogma of CRT was already being peddled by that show. In fact, other than a cameo in Dirty Harry the Deadpool as a weird punk rocker who overdoses on drugs and dies, I didn't know of Jim Carrey until he was on In Living Color, playing the role, essentially, of being the token white guy on that comedy sketch show. I remember specifically him playing the role of a little white boy in a skit with a black man playing the white father, and white dad said something remotely politically conservative, and the little boy says, "You're a racist," in that way that only Jim Carrey can do. And the very unfunny whole point of this sketch is that the little boy says, because white people are all racist, I'm going to sell out and I'm going to grow up to specifically and intentionally try to live like a black man. Lifelong token, cultural appropriator, and hanger-on, talentless hack, that's Jim Carrey. He gets famous from being on that show, and he rides that. He rides his tokenized position where he just is there to be this straw man to be attacked or to represent positions to be attacked and to overact in this ridiculous way. He rides that all the way to cinematic success and big money. Now he is a brilliant socialist who gets to tell you that other people deserved what you earned. I got news for you. Jim Carrey, you don't deserve what you earned. What you did to get it was something that any monkey with an organ grinder could have done. And seriously, in hindsight, it is cringeworthy to use the parlance of our current time. What did Jim Carrey ever do that was actually any good? Oh yes, in the Tim Burton universe, he was the Riddler. He played the Riddler so completely over the top that many of us, we did find it funny at the time. I always was uncomfortable with how over the top Jim Carrey was, but the Riddler, he gives them this eccentric, cartoonish persona in a cartoonish type of universe, and it kind of worked. But with all the discussion now about, who was the best Riddler, about the current depiction of the Riddler, which I haven't seen, I'm not going to see this new nonsense. But who was the worst Riddler of all time? Most certainly Jim Carrey. If I go back to the 60s and pick out any of the Riddlers from the 60s, from the comic book, from a cartoon, they were all superior. Even though for the era, Jim Carrey was a famous name, and even though it kind of works in the Tim Burton universe, the bottom line is he's the worst Riddler. Probably my favorite Jim Carrey movie, or I should say my favorite movie that happens to have Jim Carrey in it, is Liar, Liar. But if you've seen that movie, and you probably have, go back and watch it again. There's absolutely nothing that Jim Carrey brings to that movie. Nothing. Zip, zilch, nada, bupkis. Nothing. In fact, in those episodes in the movie in which he overacts, they're kind of painful. Like that over-the-top, dramatic, overacting, weird Fire Marshal Bill, whatever, In Living Color thing that he does, those are actually the really difficult parts of the movie to get through. Liar, Liar is an incredible movie. It's a funny movie. It's an incredible script. Anybody with a remote funny bone could have played that role. It needs a little bit of physical humor, dramatic responses and recoils, but nothing like what Mr. Carrey does. In fact, we would have to say that movie script is so good that the movie is really good in spite of Jim Carrey being in it. He brings nothing to it except the danger of detracting from it by his weird and wacky behavior. So how does somebody like this become famous? Well, being a perpetual hanger-on and a token, being a cultural appropriator. When you became wealthy and famous off of the things they were doing on In Living Color. How his success measures against the Wayans brothers, I don't know the details in that. But why in the name of Infernos is Jim Carrey famous and wealthy from being the token white guy on the Wayans staff in Living Color? The whole thing is really kind of silly. And it is a mystery. I mean, Amy Schumer, she has political connections. The fact that she is notoriously unfunny doesn't stop her from being a comedian. Everybody that was in Ghostbusters 2016, travesty. Nowadays, you don't have to be funny. Leslie Jones gets on Saturday Night Live. She can literally do one role. She's always Leslie Jones trying to be funny. She's never different than that. You go back to Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy put on whiteface and pretended to be white. Whatever you think of Eddie Murphy, he could act and he could do different comedic roles. Not Leslie Jones, not Jim Carrey, not Amy Schumer, not any of the ridiculous crap that is being peddled today for our consumption. But Jim Carrey, in particular, gets my goat because he's out there strutting around like he is semi-retired elder statesman, Hollywood elite, here to tell you what Hollywood should be. Dude, I wouldn't let you voice over on a cartoon. He should be counting his blessings at how lucky he was to get an opportunity to overdose on drugs in a Dirty Harry movie. How lucky he was that the Wayans brothers allowed him to be their water boy, an occasional stand-in and tokenized white dude. Because that is what resulted in him being this multimillionaire who gets to lecture us on what we deserve or don't deserve and other people should really get. He makes me so angry that I'm sort of doing the Jim Carrey overacting thing. Jim Carrey. No, sorry. He is a talentless hack, a lifelong token, hanger-on, and a cultural appropriator. Not that I believe in that stuff, but people like him allege to, and yet he's done it his whole life. Talentless hack.